And I'm Lou Beaudry, co-host.
So we'll be with you. We'll be with you this evening, and just welcome to the 29th annual Fisher Poets Gathering. Yeah, pretty exciting. Just a few house notes. Performers, just check in with us. We are in the corner over here on the side of the theater. Just remember to silence your cell phones. And I just want to thank the volunteers at the door. Give them a smile if you can on your way out. They're working hard. And I want to say thank you to the Liberty Theater staff. Thank you so much for having us. So on that note, let's get this show on the road. Our first performer is Philip Patton from Seattle, Washington, and he told me just to leave it at that. So can we have a warm welcome for Philip?
I have one long piece. It is called Miles of Ice and a Hatchet. And I'm going to get this up just a little bit. Miles of Ice and a Hatchet. Inuit natives were all lining up and laughing at my brother, David. How chopping at the ice floes surrounding his boat. The floes surrounded all the boats. David chopping at ice with a hatchet. Hell, even I thought it was funny. The chunks of ice blown in by a west wind, the smallest chunks surround the boats, small enough to drift without grounding into the shallows where we anchored. And then, if you allow yourself into the eyes of these 100 stranded fishermen, mostly Inuit, beyond the small ice and the boats is a higher wall of ice whose keels hang up on the shelf and thus can't make it into shallower waters. Huge ice, all wind compacted against this shore, a mile of impassable crags before open water, and my brother hitting at it with a hatchet. A day before the ice blew in, we all had motored north from Unalakleet on the southeast end of Norton Sound, halfway up the part of Alaska north of the Aleutians. We pick our way along, the water freckled with ice from the size of a beer cooler to a small house. Sometimes it's me standing on the bow with a pike pole, gesturing to David at the helm, ice avoidance, sometimes fending off. David's is a smaller boat than the Titanic, but everything would be in proportion, except us or me, who on the bow of the Titanic would have to be as large as King Kong. I have something in common with King Kong. I also miss Fay Ray. There isn't a Fay Ray in my life. I believe I have become distracted. That's what men's heads do, distract by thinking of Fay Rays. Or should that be like brothers-in-law or attorneys general? Phase Ray, like the phaser rays in Star Trek. Did I mention I'm a little attention deficit disorder? We are after herring, or technically after their eggs, for Japan men to eat. Well, that year the ice had been in for a long while, which kept the shore waters too cold for herring to spawn. So Fish and Game had postponed the opening. What nobody knew was that the herring had mostly spawned anyway. The pressures of ripe eggs in female bellies overriding any civilized constraint or finicky desire for kelpie mating beds of just the right temperature. So we didn't make any money. But what the hell, it was a blissful 6 weeks. I had told my bosses at the really stupid job I had in Seattle selling cash registers, God, I'm embarrassed thinking about that I'd be back in 2 weeks. Came back with a beard 6 weeks later. I can't think of why I came back. They had given half my commission from a fair-sized sale to some new guy to manage the installation. which is actually managed by the Tex, which pissed me off. And even though that sale made me top salesman in the month I mostly wasn't there, they fired me, told me I should be doing greater things, which was so true, not that I actually did. Snow-brown crags below, after a brief stop at Fairbanks, and then dropping down to land on a 6,000-foot runway that no town in the lower 48 with only one restaurant and one little hotel would have warranted. Perhaps the streets were paved. In my memory, all its buildings are brown, or seem brown. They weren't, of course, but they seem ready to hunker down for a repeat of the long, joyful whitewash of winter when all is dark. Now it bustles with those of us joyfully ready to kill fish. David and Paul, our youngest brother, won't arrive from their homes in Nome, that's off to the northwest, for a while. Well, it turns out to be a week. Our sister Thea, I vaguely remember that I arrived first. We pitch our tents on the beach a mile north of town below Winter Trail Road that separates beach from the long, narrow junk dump, a sort of unproprietary wrecking yard. Beyond that, parallel to the beach and road, the runway, and then a backwater of the Unalakleet River below grassy hills. A week later, in the junk dump, we find a hydraulic bow roller in passable condition, a device that will pull a net in. We salvage it with ideas of future use. Then we hear on the radio that some fancy fishboat crew that threw it away can't make their replacement work and wonder who swiped it from the dump. We put it back at the entrance to the line of dead vehicles and eviscerated equipment. It disappears, presumably stolen back by its original owners. But that's all a bit later, between the time David and Paul show up from Nome and the time of finally setting off to catch fishies. We're still 100 miles below the Arctic Circle, so the sun sets, though it's June, and this thing is drooping. You know, it's like talking to a small dog. Stay. Nah, this will work. No, it won't. Okay. We're still 100 miles below the Arctic Circle, so the sun sets, though it's June. But in its shallow circle, look at that. You know, I've had so many people bow down to me, but never a microphone just bowing. That is microphones for Serbians. That was better than the poem. Go ahead. Okay, we're still 100 miles below the Arctic Circle, so the sun sets, though it's June. But in its shallow circle, it never gets far enough below the horizon to make actual dark. I read a detective story all night because I can. And the light, it isn't like light down here. It is silver. The sky, whether blue or cloudy, the rolling grassy foothills behind, the beach, the water, the horizon, the air, it all has more than a color, almost an internal glow of silver. Chopping at ice with a hatchet isn't the only goofy idea my brother David has had. His boat is a 23-foot Oregon Dory, a plywood boat with a cabin up front and about 12 feet of open deck space. It's the smallest in the fleet with the largest crew. David's idea is that if he has a crew of 3, when the openings happen, we'll be able to spell each other and fish continuously and thus make more money. There's only one night where all 4 of us crowd into a cabin the size of a queen bed and sleep. David's boat has long rollers on each side. A herring gill net is monofilament mesh anchored at each end, and one works the net up one roller, down the other, and shakes the fish free or captured onto the deck. There are other ways to do it. Most have hydraulics. Some are bow pickers with an unstolen powered roller up front and a cabin in the stern. Cape Denby is this uvulous sort of peninsula that hangs down from the northeast end of Norton Sound below Norton Bay. We're all on a west-facing shallow bay and open expanse behind the beach, then cliffs. 100 miles west, Norton Sound opens to the Bering Sea. 30 boats. We're near where Fish and Game plans to call an opening, which is when it's legal to have nets in the water. But the next morning, we wake to ice. We're closest to the south end of our little bay, which I suppose fits with us being Southerners from Seattle. David sleeps on his boat amidst the ice. He has a thin little cotton sleeping bag that wouldn't dream of keeping any normal person warm. On a pile of net out on the back deck, I watch him half crawl into his bag, brown canvas work pants and all. He flops a corner of a tan canvas tarp over himself, appearing happy and comfortable. The white guy with the biggest aluminum boat has an incredibly beautiful daughter he refers to as his half-breed. I politely swallow my dog-like drool. This isn't Pavlovian stimulus response salivation to a bell when there is no dog food present. This northern belle, well, she has presence, and inside the doors of my brain, my mind is ringing. She explains to me that what she wants to do is raise dogs. Presumably, she doesn't mind if they drool and salivate. Huskies, of course. She also has a husky, Nordic-looking boyfriend. That's all the gratuitous sex slobber drool this story gets, except when we get to the tender. That's a boat that buys fish on which we'll camp. There to look at the pin boys and playhouses in the men's head where you have to hold the door shut with your foot because it has no latch. Men's heads, I mean their minds, are built that way, meaning that our minds have doors with no latches that if we are good Lutherans, which goes along with fishing, we try to hold shut with one foot so our occasional or frequent lasciviousness isn't quite so omnipresent even to us, even though everyone knows it is there. We're all pent boys, pent up, and the pent boys and the use thereof. Guys are like cows with one udder hanging down, and like cows, they may bawl and cry and whimper if it isn't milked once in a while. Whoops, I should have held the door to my head shut just now with my foot. The natives quickly set up a baseball game that lasts the whole week. The ice keeps us stuck. I was always lousy at baseball. I couldn't get the thing in the basket or dribble, though not as bad as at football where I couldn't figure out how to use the dice. And even though nowhere near as bad as at basketball where once I ran for a touchdown toward the wrong end zone, I feel intimidated. Heck, it was 50 years ago, and back then I was still 2/3 shy. Instead of playing, I spend the week in an Inuit elder's tent writing bylaws for a native fishing cooperative to try to accomplish native-owned and controlled fish buying. That's sort of like chopping at the huge, icy capitalism of the American, but mainly Japanese fish processing industry with a small hatchet. I have help from a very smart young native woman who I am too spoiled and prissy to be attracted to and too shy to act on if I were. About the third day, David, Paul, Thea, and I climbed to the top of the Cape. Heather, tundra, small wildflowers, a stretch of water to the east, and then miles of river deltas. Norton Sound to the west, and a mile of ice spread out below. The native co-op I tried to write bylaws for, as far as I know, it didn't go anywhere, though it was a notion both obvious and inevitable. Shortly after the Soviet Union fell, vaguely similar organizations of slightly different purpose happened for all the fishing communities near the Bering Sea. Back then, the Inuit elder asks me to stay, I mean, that's a compliment, presumably in Unalakleet. He says, "We need you." In that silent way of mine, where I can't quite verbalize the question that blocks me, and thus fail to think further, I fail to ask him, how would that work? Could there be a job? How would we set this up? I have always been good at not asking the obvious questions. A mild offshore breeze takes the ice out. A fish tender, something over 100 feet, meets us and tows us all over the sound for fish and feeds us $10 each per day. We pitch our tents on the back deck amidst piles of old nets. Cities appear on the silver southern horizon, hundreds of towering skyscrapers. We fish a couple days on the south side, near the town of St. Michael. We don't catch much. The cook fries me up a couple Dolly Varden and Nedrimus char that, like salmon spawned in freshwater, pulled in with a few herring, incredibly tasty fish. The cities on the southern horizon, absolutely real looking. I tell myself there are only mirages. I say it's only bergs the surface of water reflects into tall prisms. My brain keeps telling me otherwise. Back to the squat, brown little village of Unalakleet. Amidst all that, where for a change we eat $6 hamburgers, 3 times the then stateside price, in a fishing town in which the restaurant doesn't sell fish. A day of going through the gear and cleaning the boat, the airport, and back to where, at least from the perspective of the dismal mood in which I write this, it is me chopping with a small hatchet at endless miles of white life here in a Seattle that seems, in contrast, dull brown. Thank you.
Sports fishing. I don't know why they call it sports. It's just like misery. I'm not very good at it. That's probably why. I think I'm being punished. So this poem is called Fishing Till Nightfall. Red over white, fishing at night. Green over white, trawling. I no longer ramble amid the dark waves or tumble under the night sky. I no longer feel my heart pound at the sound of surf in the night, nor fear sudden shallows or invisible pinnacles stabbing up from the depths unmeasured. But gone also is the thrill of the catch, the thrum of the engines, the rumble of the gear. No longer am I for the long journeys to distant waters, or the sight of city lights from my evening drift. Now I wander the riverbanks and the lake shores, bamboo wand in hand, waiting for nightfall to reveal my empty creel. Thank you. Brevity is a soul wit, so I have some haiku. I love the form, and these are 4 seasonal haiku about fishing. Haiku traditionally dwells on the natural world, the seasons, sometimes human endeavor, so I hope I got it here. Spring, pulling out the seine, mountainous stinking pile gives meaning to the word rat hole. Summer, come home salmon, so fierce, so beautiful, how a fish should look. Fall, the last tender in Cinder River waits for us, has showers, pizza oven. Winter, and I'm just feeling this after the previous poet. Winter, thank you, winter moon. Thy generous, radiant face reveals the sea ice.
So as you heard, I'm a fish biologist, and I spent quite a bit of time up in Alaskan waters working with commercial fishermen. We're doing the groundfish survey every year. And when you're on a large boat with a bunch of people and you can't get out of each other's space, the quarters get kind of cramped. And so everyone has to kind of find that place for themselves that's a safe place where they can hang out and relax. And that is what inspired my poems this year. So the first poem is called Magic Mountain, and it's about a place in Cook Inlet that we ended up in after we ran away from a storm in Shelikof Strait and ended up there the next day. 6:50 a.m. I'm settling into the pilot's chair in the wheelhouse. A steaming cup of coffee is warming my hands, the strong aroma hitting my nostrils. I lean back, my feet set on the footrest, and I let my eyes relax, scanning across the horizon in the twilight, waiting for the sunrise. On the boat, we call this chair the Serenity Chair. It is the most coveted seat in the wheelhouse, and I often get up extra early so I can sit in a spot undisturbed and let a moment of tranquility fill me up before the start of another long working day at sea. As it sometimes happens in this land of mist and wind, a light breeze lifts the clouds, and there she reveals herself to me, Mount Augustine, a mountain that is an island inside a bay ringed by mountains. A perfect cone, snowy fields pad on the top, and she slopes down into the water in absolute symmetry. The picture book image of a volcano. And when I turn to port and look across the bay, a tall and rough mountain range rises up, the Katmai Wilderness, displaying 4 snow-covered craggly peaks and a glacier's blue-green mass flowing towards the ocean, ending right above the waterline. This land is wild and otherworldly. The water today is like glass. Tiny ripples are blown across it in patches of silver, and the mountains are mirrored along the distant shoreline. On deck, everyone's spirits soar, drinking in this view, and work comes easy today. All day long, Augustine will put on a display of shadows and veils, clouds obscuring and revealing different aspects of her massive form. She will constantly change her face, the sunlight playing with patches of brilliant snow that contrast with dark ravines and massive rock. Until, in the afternoon, she decides to hide again. Low clouds descend and gray mist envelops the island. The water turns the color of lead. And it already seems like a distant dream that she was even there. But she leaves us with a rare memory of this rough and wild country. The magical image of a perfect mountain that is an island inside a bay ringed by mountains. This was a good day at sea. The next poem is about something that I love going out to Alaska, is when things that are old don't really ever go away, they just get repurposed. It's called The Chief's Chair. It is strategically located in the old factory of the Alaska Provider. The back to the wall, with a full view of the workshop, underneath a large shop heater, next to the table he built from leftover scrap wood of an old project. He found this chair in the ghost town of the abandoned Navy base on Adak Island years ago. An Army-issued steel frame, solidly built chair with armrests, government gray with black cushions. Indestructible, really. Overall, I was in decent shape, except the foam seat was cracked and the stuffing fell out. But all it took was an old life vest and some bright blue duct tape. And over time, this new cushion has compressed just the right amount to mold into a perfect seat. There's some paint splatters on the back and the legs are a little rusty. He cannot begin to count the hours he has spent sitting in this chair, thinking over the latest engine problem, talking to his wife on the phone, or contemplating his next move when welding some contraption to fix something somewhere. Sometimes, back home, when he dreams of the boat, this chair will appear in his dreams. And he knows, next trip, it will be waiting for him, like any good fishing friend. Solid frame, a little beat up, practically indestructible.
Quickly, very short poem. I have a friend. I started fishing when I was a kid, pretty much. And one of the first people I was thrown into with was a guy named Jim. He's a skiff man. Naturally, we had to spend months together in that skiff. And we couldn't stand the sight of each other. Like, he detested me. And he was like, thought I was a snot-nosed East Coast greenhorn. I thought he was an arrogant hillbilly. But over time, and time will tell, over the years, many years now, we've become the closest of friends. He is my best friend. And we share a birthday. So every year we make a point of getting together with our wives, go out to dinner, or go up to Lacana or something like that, and celebrate our birthdays. And this year, I decided to write him a little poem, very brief. Like I said, brevity is the soul of wit. So this is it. People always said we were like brothers from different mothers. So that's why this poem is called Gemini. Glance above at eventide into the wide and starry sky. There you'll see them side by side. Are they the twins or Jim and I? Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope to see you all. Let's all be back here next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And we're going to roll right along to our next performer. Next up is Jennifer Nightingale. She lives here in Astoria. She loves to pick up trash from beaches and rivers and help the fish have safe homes. Please give her a very warm welcome.
My fishing cred actually came from working at the Warrington Deep Sea Fish Market, and I even did some work with Mike Josephson, and he helped me when I wrote my coming-of-age novel, Alberta and the Spark. It takes place in the 1970s, and he worked on the Astoria-Megler Bridge when he was in high school. So he was able to teach me the things that I wouldn't know writing in current times. And most of the work there in that story is about oysters. And back in the 70s and before that, oysters reproduced in the natural way. And I had discovered that they can't do that like they used to because of the acidification of the ocean. And so they do different things now. So in order to understand how to give that story the right kind of bones, I had to know how things happened then. Anyway, because I worked in fish markets, I was able to come here, and a couple of years ago, something really magical happened to me. And it just didn't happen to me. The ripples were felt beyond that. And the ripples are still going on. And that is, when I worked at the fish market, my boss, and now friend, a woman by the name of Seeley, said to me, you know, people have been fishing on this river for 10,000 years. And I'm going, yeah, I know. She said, but you know, people have been writing poetry before there were Fisher poets. And I'm going, yeah, really? Okay. She goes, you need to bring back some of that old stuff. And I said to her, I said, well, how do I do that? And she said, you'll figure it out. Now that's what she always said to me, is you'll figure it out. Anyway, as fate would have it, I went to the Clatsop County Historical Society. And they have an archive there. And the archive is actually in an old bank vault. And in this old bank vault was a collection of 73 poems that were written in 1940 by school children in different schools all over the county, many of which are no longer here. And some of the towns that they were in are no longer here. They might have been a lumber town that has been erased from the landscape. And in amongst those 73 poems was some really good stuff. So I read it at Fisher Poets, and then I was asked to read it at the Clatsop County birthday party because these poems belong to Clatsop County. So I said, okay. And then I was asked to read it at the Astoria Regatta Seamen's Memorial, which is a very, very somber event. Anybody ever been to the Seamen's Memorial? Okay. Well, it's where they come together as a community. The Coast Guard comes, you know, they're carrying the colors and all that kind of stuff. And I read these poems. Three of the ones that I thought were, you know, the most fitting to that moment. And then afterwards, people came to me and said, you need to bring that back. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? And in my mind's ear, I heard Seeley saying, you'll figure it out. Now here's the magic. I ended up partnering with the Columbia River Maritime Museum. We brought that contest back to 3 counties on the Oregon side and 3 counties on the Washington side. And from that event came 8 winning poets with beautiful work. And the theme was river, and what each kid did with the theme was astonishingly good. And this year, it's happening again. So if anybody knows kids who want to make history, want to see their work found in another 80 years, tell them to check out the Columbia River Maritime Museum. And this year, the topic is watershed. Anyway, I'd like to read you a poem written by a little boy named Nicky Rusinovich. And it's very sweet. It's called The Seagull. And I need glasses when I have to read things. So. Shiny little seagull coming from the sea, what strange tales you could tell. If you could talk to me, where did you spend the night? Where were you a week ago? And what did you see on your last flight? These are things I should like to know. Where is it you hide your nest? Out upon the rocky shore? Are your babies safe at rest, where the angry sea doth roar? Storm-tossed birds, do you not fear the danger of the dashing foam? May strong wings guide you through the year and always bring you safely home. Now, when I read that the first time, I was at Xanadu, and I said, I would so like to know about what happened. What happened to these kids? What happened to this little Nicky Rusinovich who won first prize? And what happened to this other person, And little 3x5 cards started coming up to me on the stage that were handed over from the bartender of various people saying, oh, well, that was my Uncle Nicky, or, you know, that was my Auntie Marie, and all these things. And so I made a bunch of new friends out of that deal, which was pretty cool. But that was a particular kind of magic that can happen here in this community, where people come from everywhere, and it's all pretty, as we like to say in the Pacific Northwest, it's skookum. And so I'd like to read you one more poem written by the children. And this one, surprise, is called The Fisherman. And it was written by a little boy. He won third prize. His name is Oscar Hagland, and he's from the little town of Napa. He says, I am a jolly fisherman. My life is gay and free. I love to smell the salty tang from the misty sprays of sea. I work hard when a fish is run and catch as many as any man. For when the season's work is done, I live as best I can. A fisherman's life is like the sea. It has ups and downs, and I know not what it holds for me when its breakers leap and pound. So, Oscar, wherever you are, you're being remembered here in Astoria tonight. Now, working in a fish market, of course, you have to get your fish from places, and you get oysters, and you get places from different seafood from different places. And one day I went out and saw some oystermen, and they were shoveling big mounds of oysters out on the deck and washing them down in the way that people do. And all these oystermen, they were Hispanic, and I thought they were really handsome. They were wearing their green overalls and all that kind of stuff. And so I asked if I could take their picture. And they got real shy and looked at me and said, "Please don't show our faces." So this is a short little poem, and it's called The Oysterman, and these were oyster guys that were up at Goose Point Oyster on the Washington coast. I met the crew out at the dock, unloading oysters from the boat, kitted out in fisherman's gear, all-weather overalls, orange and glossy, like apricot jam, muddy gumboots that promised security. They were handsome and muscular and Latino. And I watched them spray down the oysters, shovel them up into a mountain. "May I take your photo?" I asked. Don't show our faces, please," an oysterman said to me. "Oh, but you look so handsome and strong," I promised. But I was thick as a brick. And I saw the faces of frightened boys, and they looked down at the piles of oysters on the deck. And I backed away, feeling like a fool. Well, I think I don't want to use too much time, so I want to say thank you very much. This has been really great sharing all this with you. Thank you.
Farewell, my fair weather friend. The black clouds are now rolling in. We had some good days, but here come the big waves, blown by a barbarous wind. We're sailing the stormy cold sea. Sorry. Well, fishing is tough, the waves never let up. We're sailing the stormy cold seas. And when it is calm, we all get along. But when it gets rough, we get mean. Farewell, my fair weather friend. The black clouds are now rolling in. We had some good days, but here come the big waves, blown by a barbarous wind. I'm chewing my snuff just to wake up. Caffeine, it rolls in my bones. Sun up to sundown, we go round and round, fishing for when we get home. Farewell, my fair weather friend. The black clouds are now rolling in. We had some good days, but here come the big waves, blown by a barbarous wind. Farewell, my fair weather friend. Yes. Whenever I walk on the beach, I think back on my days of fishing, and this is a song called "Standing on the Shore." Standing on the shore where the wind and waves collide, I stare into the distance where the ocean meets the sky. To be upon the open sea, far from the neon lights, where the compass and the North Star were my only signs. One Seasons pass and years go fast, and now my story's told. I raise a glass and tip my hat to all who lived so bold, to children and the loving wife who held me in their hearts, to memories of boatloads and to those who crossed the bar. I walk the crimson shoreline, the sunsets on the sea, a twilight mist descending in the cooling of the breeze. A schooner in the distance heads far away from land. With my peacoat tied around me, I walk home along the sand.
Years ago, sea voyages were 2 to 3 years long, and if you were shipwrecked, it would be another 2 to 3 years before you found out that they weren't coming back. This song is called "This Ragged Shore." Yeah, I fished for 7 years, and we hit a rock once and almost sunk. There is nothing more terrifying. I sailed the sea since I was young, beneath the moon and stars, into the sun. I've been wherever the great whales blow. I called my home I'll not sail my seas no more. Lay me to rest on this ragged shore. This brigantine would spear the stars from moonlit sails, the dark into the wind. She dip and glide, but she can't fight the black rock night. And I'll not sail my ship no more. Lay me to rest on this ragged shore. The cauldron sky, the dagger reef, the red dawn stains the bloody sea. Here now I lie, tattered and torn. No more will I e'er fight these storms. No more will I e'er fight these storms. The one I love, so far away, she waits for me in Nantucket Bay. I remember when we danced all night
morning sun. She held me tight, and I'll not see my love no more. Lay me to rest on this ragged shore. No, I'll not see my love, dear Lord. Lay me to rest on this ragged shore. Do a costume change here. I was always the first to get sick and the last to get well. And at times I turned all 50 shades of green. 50 shades of green. This is called the Seasick Blues Waltz. The wind, it's a wailing, it's sad tale of woe. My stomach recoils and tells me heave-ho. Up out of the forecastle and onto the deck, I stumble and groan at what's coming next. Looks like I'm losing another big meal. I fall to my knees and I bark like a seal. My throat, it erupts with a god-awful taste. I then realize the wind's in my face. The wind's in my face. Take me, oh, take me away from the sea. These seasick blues are turning me green. Far away from the waves to Astoria town, where the women step lightly upon solid ground. They call me Old Faithful, 'cause I spout like a whale. My oilskins are stained with fishes and trails. The gulls, they attack me, 'cause I'm looking like bait. I'm stuck in the scupper, flat on my face. Well, the crew, they don't like when I'm taking time off. They say, back on your feet, you gotta gut some more cod. Coil the line, 'cause we're setting more gear. Bait some more hooks, you gotta love your career. You gotta love your career. Take me, oh, take me away from the sea. These seasick blues are turning me green. Far away from the waves to Astoria town, where the women step lightly upon solid ground.
Next we have Shannon Zellerhoff. She's from Deming, Washington. Some of you might know her. She's fished out of Dutch Harbor in the 90s. And she's now sailing the deep sea as a merchant mariner. So give her a big hand.
Thank you. So back in the 90s, you know, I grew up thinking I could do anything because my mom did anything. Nobody made me wear makeup or dress up, or except on Sunday when I went to church. But in the 90s, you know, when I went out to Dutch Harbor from Maine, I sometimes was told I had to ask permission to come aboard a boat because the owner was, you know, old-fashioned and from a different tradition than mine, and so I politely said, "Sir, may I please come aboard?" I want to say nobody here had to ask permission. This is an all-inclusive, welcoming community, and welcome aboard. Don't lose your glasses in the bilge. All right, so this first piece is a poem in 6 parts, and it is called Shanghai Noodle House. Sometimes the grounds become barren, devoid of coral, mud, nutrients. The fish have swum away, the crab are marching with their strong claws out towards Kamchatka. Tiny sculpins have dissolved into particles of phosphorescent grit. The moon must be new now, too, or possibly it's the season when the Kuroshio current has begun to slacken. The world is a scapegoat to the fishermen. We are too proud to admit the facts. Our bait is stale. The depth sounder is broken. I lost the code to the HF radio, and we have no idea where we are. Part 2. There is a lot of luck in fishing. Lucky there are people like us willing to exchange birthdays and bankrolls and barbecues for beamy boats full of cold water, soaked through to the socks with a plethora of soggy superstitions. We work, forgetting there are options to working for a catch, predicated upon hopes and dreams and something unexplainable, something biblical, part crucible, the chemistry of dawn. Part 3. Wake up! Wake up! It's time to make a wish. We are throwing the gear with lunatic intentions back into the blankety-blank sea again. We are glad smacking each other with snowballs and fists. We are tossing our gear into the deathly cold water as if each pot was a moldy penny, that same moldy penny your father convinced you would bring you good luck if you made a wish and tossed it into the wishing well at Shanghai Noodle House. Yet, unlike children, we don't expect much. We expect nothing, in fact. From underneath this slatternly skim of silty silt, this is why we continue to work our corner of the salty sea. We are carpet bombing the bottom with pots full of talisman. It is sheer insanity. Part 4. The edge of our eyes grow testy and red. We have been listening to Soundgarden for 13 days. Their lyrics have become the explanation for our existence. We sing them swearing, sweating, our backs steaming in the sleet. We labor like beasts yoked to time, speculating, black hole sun, won't you come? Part 5. The hydraulics are screaming. The wind is screaming to match the hydraulics. Our strained psychosis is numb. Our lust for pots full of crab have transformed us into an inverse sort of pagan religion founded upon the hope of pulling gods up from the bottom where camels once roamed before sand became mud. Part 6. And on the 40th day, cirrus clouds sighed, forming the shape of an angel, floating on pointed wings of diamond dust and broken glass, wings pointing further north, further west, directing us to more lucrative grounds, directing us to the wishing well of the sea, where we might haul at least 350 crab per pot. Looks like it's time to change the tape, we said, tossing Soundgarden over the rail. Thank you. All right, this one's called Any Boat in the Fleet. Deep in the hold of the Nagasaki Maru, me and McLaughlin from the ILWU Local 200 were pulling 45-pound boxes of frozen pollock off pallets. It was Christmas Day. The wages couldn't be beat. In between crane lifts, I practiced catching snowflakes on my tongue like Charlie Brown, snowflakes like cherry blossoms tumbling through the hatch, plumping down from the sky through the snow geese, maybe feathers, falling through the scrum of clouds, dividing the island in two like teams. The working noise of the ship,
pneumatic winches, ballast pumps, energized our bleary-eyed indifference. McLaughlin said, "Either your life is your job, or your job is your life." I wasn't sure which was me yet. After work, we shared a frozen pizza near the church. He was slouched over the tacky checkered cloth, gathering crumbs like a sheepdog sheep. I couldn't take my eyes off his perpetually lit cigarette, tottering like a bin board balanced on his teeth, or his gaping mouth scarred in a way made you wonder, repeating stories you knew were true because he talked of cables parting. Loads of logs falling from the sky, hooks failing, plummeting pallets of stores, spilling milk and tomatoes and something like hamburger smelled too sweet. Catastrophes and love affairs belly flopped along the coast like a broken beach of Bukowski poems. Joking in the shadow of death. Strung out in lettered buoys all the way from San Diego to Oahu, Ketchikan to Anchorage, Kodiak to Dutch. Leaning back in my chair, dodging McLaughlin's exhaust, I declared a relatively factual hyperbole. I think I made more money last year washing dishes at the Sand Trap in Gearhart than I've made all year fishing cod. McLaughlin stood up, stumped out his cigarette like a cancer, looked at his watch for time gone past, nodded to the door. I set down a $100 tip. Thank you. Yeah, my little stint, in between fisheries, sometimes you're like, what am I doing? So I thought I'd become a longshoreman, but after a day of that, I just was like, I'd rather be fishing. This one's called 5 Strikes in a Row. Alone on the bridge, spanning the morning sea I don't fear anymore, the sea that conveys without being asked to give. I'm wearing sneakers now on the bridge, soft-soled shoes. I don't want to smash things that don't wish to break. The watch goes by like a postcard sent home from Elmer's barn. I contemplate the fishing I used to do, can't figure out when it became my responsibility to explain those years, mornings I feared. When did I begin to think I was immune to the toll the Bering Sea struck? What killed first, death, drowning, determined our desensitized souls? Maybe now I have a form of survivor's guilt. Moral, existential, group, the list goes on and on like a death trench exposed. On the flight home to Washington from a Florida port I know too well, the plane carried survivors. One is an X-ray tech, used to sell dope, he said, in Juarez. In the seat behind me, a teacher is in mourning for the school systems. We are all, to some degree, transient poets, subsidized farmers, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, caretakers, partners in law, partners in crime, nurses, cooks, deckhands, singing on boats. Before I left the container ship in Jacksonville, one of the guys asked me, curious, "So Shannon, what are you going to do at home on vacation?" I said, looking down at my feet, "Put the same boiler suit on, fix things, pretend I'm on a ship." Pruning the cherry trees, an epiphany. Everyone I knew who I fished with, I know no longer. Except maybe the guy wearing a shirt with the pocket that said Greg. I swear I fished with him, Opie's 1993 for all Alaskan seafoods, on that mud boat, rusted, a ubiquitous blue, with her stern announcing Shelikoff. He's a pro league bowler now. I saw him bowl 5 strikes in a row. Thank you. It takes a long time to get rid of fishing. For the first 10 years after I quit fishing, I would look at my watch when openers were coming. tank inspection's happening today. My husband would look at me and be like, what's tank inspection? And I'm always looking for someone I used to fish with, and being a merchant mariner now, I spend so much time on the water. I really spend a lot of mental energy when there's no traffic and the ocean's wide open, just recollecting what it meant to be a fisherman, and I'm honored to still be able to work on the water. I write all these poems fresh for Fisher Poets, and this one I just wrote a couple weeks ago. It's called The Crab Fisherman's Mantra. Dutch Harbor, November 1992. We're across the water from Rosie's crab pot storage yard. Washboard cliffs of basalt plunge down to the landfill on the road to Summers Bay. I was milling around the pot yard then, like a muddy dog looking for a home, homeless, hanging with an over-muscled ex-meth addict out of Aberdeen told me to call him Snacky. Just two nomadic fishermen deadlifting crab pots for vanity's sake, merely for fun. Should have been a sign, a signal from God. Soaked through to our capillaries in sepia-toned cotton clothing, exhuming 650-pound crab pots of steel like grave diggers from their chunky gravel beds, we strained with bare hands, hoodie sliding up the back, snowflakes melting, ice and wind and steel, the elements nipping like fire on our face, fire like ice and steel lapping at the base of my youthful spine, where I kept the crab fisherman's mantra safe. The mantra Snacky told me to repeat until I could say it no more. The day I quit crab fishing is the day they pry this cold steel pot off my cold dead chest. Which I figured would probably come true if I kept at it long enough. After 6 more seasons, like the prolific wheat fields of Sicily during that rat-infested reign of the great mortality, the bubonic plague, I simply up and quit. Had I been immune to the facts and the dangers the fishery statistics proposed back then? Yeah, I guess so. Lucky me.
So next up, it's my great pleasure to introduce my co-MC, Lou Beaudry from McCall, Idaho. He spent 42 years in the commercial fishing industry, from gill netting the Copper River and Prince William Sound to gill netting in Bristol Bay and seining in Prince William Sound. He's seen it all. So let's give him a loud welcome and warm welcome to the stage.
Did you go to Big Bend? Big Bend National Park.
The Chinese have a curse. May you live in interesting times. I would say we're living in interesting times now. Perhaps troubled times. And fishermen, in the course of pursuing our career, often travel in troubled waters. In either case, it's essential to have a solid anchor. So the last boat that I owned was also the oldest boat. It came with this tremendous rusty old cast iron Danforth style anchor. And whenever I put that down, it very seldom would drag. It was a good, dependable dependable anchor. I lost it one time though. We were, one minute we were happily anchored, second we were drifting away. Of course, it was in the middle of the night, so anchor drill, everybody up on deck. And I don't know what we did, tied up to another boat or tied off to a buoy for the night, but the next day we came back and I knew I had 80 feet of heavy chain on that anchor, and I knew it was stretched out in this little cove that we were in a straight line, the direction that the wind was blowing. So we went back the next day with the skiff, and it had a little skiff anchor, and we drug crossways to it. About 20 minutes later, we hooked up the chain, ran the boat over to it, put it on the deck winch, and the main boom wrestled it up on deck, strapped it down, ran to town, got a new anchor cable. The anchor cable had parted at the chain where it attached to the chain. And came back out, we were back in business, lucky anchor. So I wrote this song about my anchor. I've had this old anchor now for the best part of my life. Held me through the storms, held me through my strife. If every man needs something which he can believe, I guess this old anchor been that thing for me. It was old when I first got it, all scratched and full of dents. It's completely rusted, and the shaft's just a little bent. Dropped it in the mud and sand and the rocks, and yet somehow still rides rough and ready, proudly on my bow. And it's always brought me comfort when I put her down. I'll admit there's a couple of times might have given ground, but it's good to have something to hold fast instead of drifting round. There's a lot more to this anchor than 150 pounds. You know, this old anchor, it goes deep. It won't drag me around in my sleep. It will hold me steady when otherwise I'd crash the coast. You find the strength of something when you need it most. Been across the river bars, been out in the sound, out on the open ocean, where there's white caps all around, where the wind can blow a gale, the waves get steep and rough. Survival's seldom graceful when you're running in the trough. There are people who depend on me, and times I wonder why. There's the crew, my dog, my family, my wife. There are people who I lean on, times of doubt and pain. There's more than half-inch iron links that make this anchor chain. I've seen storms out on the ocean, seen storms here in my heart. Seen the sea turn wicked wild, seen my world ripped apart. But give me just a little piece of leave, plenty anchor line. This storm might be a rough one, but with this anchor I'll be fine. This old anchor, it goes deep. It won't drag me around in my sleep. It will hold me steady when otherwise I crash the coast. Find the strength of something when you need it most. So I hope we all have something which we can hold tight. Something to put your faith in, if only for one night. Something to put your faith in times of doubt and fear. There's a whole lot more than a fishing boat riding on this anchor gear.
Not in this boat.
Well, yeah, I had a lot of boats. It's about 7 boats in the course of my career. So I bought and sold boats. And I guess I was happy every time I bought one, and I was happy every time I sold one. A boat gives a person a tremendous amount of freedom. Out on the water, you know, there's no lines like on the road. You got to watch out for a few things. But it also comes with a lot of responsibilities. Safety is a big responsibility. The financial responsibility for a commercial fishing boat. I had loans on every boat that I had to pay that back. Had to provide a paycheck for the crew and myself. And then finally, maintenance, which is constant on a commercial fishing boat operating in saltwater. When I sold my last boat and retired, I experienced a different type of freedom. There comes a time in a man's career when he must let go something he holds dear, like an old pair of trousers or a well-worn coat. My time has come. I sold the boat. He went to the bank, got a great big loan, wanted to buy something I didn't own, with a little regret. But at last, he got the boat, and I got the cash. And I'm not throwing one more dime into that fiberglass hole. No, I'll never pay another bill at that storage yard, and I'll never have to rebuild that tired old engine one of these days. 'Cause the deal went down and the ball went away. best days, the boat owner knows well, are the days he buys and the day he sells. Well, I've known them both, and I must say that the buying is good, but the selling's great. Oh, that's great. So I'm closing my accounts at the hardware store. I'll never have to buy 500 gallons of diesel fuel anymore, and I'll never use another grinder, cattle to the store gel code. I'm free at last. I sold the boat. Oh, I'm not saying that there are not a lot of good times I will miss, like hollering, let her go, and filling that deck with fish, and talking across the water, all my good friends all of these years. But when the boat got sold, didn't shed a tear. And I'm not throwing one more dime into that fiberglass hole. No, I'll never pay another bill at that storage yard, and I'll never have to wonder if she's sinking or she's afloat. I'm free at last. I sold the boat. I'm free at last. I sold the boat. My greatest hit.
Yeah, it's all-
Yes, I sold the boat and I retired. I've written a couple songs for a couple other fishermen that have retired. And so when I retired, I kind of waited around like, someone should write a song for me for my retirement. But eventually I figured that's not going to happen. So I wrote my own retirement song. It's called Handing Off the Wheel. And whenever, on the boat, whenever we would take a long passage to get out to the fishing grounds or something, we would divide the wheel watch up into, 2 hours, 2.5 hour wheel watch. Everyone would take a turn at it. Usually everyone else would go down and get some much needed sleep. And I always would tell the guys that one of the most important times in a wheel watch is when you pass it off to the next guy, because you just woke him up out of a dead sleep in the bunk, and you're tired, you've been up paying attention for 2.5 hours. You take some time to interface with that guy, because I've seen things go wrong when that didn't work. Let them know, where you are, what's going on, what boat traffic you got coming towards you, traveling with you. So I call this handing off the wheel. It's important at the changing of the watch that the new guy, he's awake and he's in touch. That he knows where you're going and where you've been. This vessel's fate is riding upon him. Let him know what's going on. it's the middle of the darkness and you're tired to the bone. This trip is almost over. Someone's gotta get us home. I guess every dog has his day. Old memories fade away. Everyone goes down with that deal. This year I'll be handing off the wheel. I'll hand it off, I'll quietly slip it, but a piece of my heart goes with it. But I won't miss that wet southeaster, I won't miss that damn bad luck, I won't miss those cold wet sleeves or those sweaty extra tufts. I won't miss those late deliveries when the weather's building tough, or Dave grumbling on the radio. I won't miss it, not that much. But it's time now for me to step down. Time for him to make a start. This year, when those lines are cast off, with it goes a piece of my heart. Oh, but Christian, he's been with me, must be 9 or 10 years now. Know this boat as well as I do, and he knows Prince William Sound. I wish that I could tell him all the things I've learned. This kind of knowledge, it must be earned. I'll hand it off, I'll quietly slip it, but a piece of my heart goes with it. I'll pass it off, no need to rip it, but a piece of my heart goes with it. Oh, I'll miss that morning jumper show with my hands wrapped around the cup and making music in the top house when we're all rafted up. I'll miss those foggy mornings when the sky sits closer to the earth, and I'll miss that satisfaction tying back up in our berth. Oh, I'll miss those starry nights when the northern lights are lit. Yes, I've been blessed by Lady Luck, and after 40 years of fishing, that's enough. Every dog has his day. Old memories fade away. Everyone goes down with their deal. This year I'll be handing off the wheel. I'll hand it off, I'll quietly slip it, but a piece of my heart goes with it. I'll hand it off, no need to rip it, but a piece of my heart goes with it. Thanks so much. What a great audience. What a great...
12 years. Most of you probably know what those do, but we don't go into the salt. We stay on the river. We go up and down pushing barges, mostly full of wheat, and also fuel and wood chips and industrial garbage. It's a very romantic life. So last September, on a whim, I decided to try writing a poem every day for the last 100 days of the year. I found out very quickly that it does not work to tell yourself, it's okay if you write some bad poems. It does work to tell yourself, I am gonna write so many bad poems. Because with that many tries, you're probably gonna fail to be bad at least a little bit. This is number 45. There is nothing more feminist on these boats than an old guy who will not withhold a great piece of advice, just because his audience is one mild-mannered woman sitting across the galley table eating cereal in the morning. Mike said to me, earnest as anything, if you're gonna get in bar fights, you better shave off your beard, because fellas will try to grab you by it and punch you in the face. Thank you, Mike. I think about this advice on a weekly basis. It's been 10 years and I haven't needed it yet, but you never know what life might bring. I hear menopause might get rough. Number 55. I am back to work, back to the steel box of noise, back to cracking open a cold dawn with the boys, crossing spotlights with the freight trains, tapping throttles, trying to synchronize the mains. The smell of bacon rising up the tower, Axe 3-in-1 stinking up the shower. Captain didn't win the lottery this week, although he swears that if he does, he'll buy a boat and give us all a share. We pass the time, we play the cards we played last month and the month before. I get off watch, eat bacon, aim for bed, but I can't make it off the stateroom floor. The heater cranked to high, I lie and try to bribe my mind. I tell myself that if I can swing the rise, I don't yet have to do the grind. Number 67. The first thing that boats teach you is that you unavoidably have a body. And the second thing they teach you is how to turn up the squelch until you can't hear the feedback anymore. Tired and working anyway, hurt and working anyway. You get in touch with the deepest needs of your fragile human form, and then you tell it to get up off its knees, or there will be hell to pay. You can say stoicism is a gift or a prison, but mostly it's a knack for getting out of bed before regret sets in. We've got black coffee and cigarettes for the classic rock generation, and rock stars and mint zins for the kids, who are proud to have mastered that knack already. They are proud to be old enough not to cry, and they are still young enough not to cry. Number 9. I dream about fish, and that's not a metaphor. I wake up sweating, hands still sore from hauling gear up out of the night. When the dreams are good, we're catching kings, that color that lives and dies in water. Heaving, heavy, herring still falling from their mouths the way a good fillet falls off the bone. When the dreams are bad, the fish are broken, mangled, misshapen, rotting on the hooks. And I pull myself out of sleep like I am both the deckhand and the ball of bulkhead wrapped around the float. Last night in bed, I was handlining cod instead of driving to the airport, who hasn't had that one? And I ditched the flight in favor of finding a box to put the home pack in. Why am I haunted by hooks and knives and these unblinking eyes while mine are closed? I go to bed with traffic noise. I don't need to be up anymore before the anchor chain. But still, I hope the haunting never stops. This last one's a little longer. It's called The Nest. I was out for a walk in Ballard, just north of Seattle's Ship Canal. It's an old working waterfront. There's a lot of yuppies there now. I went past a Filson store where you can buy tin cloth jackets for $465 a piece. But if you go down one block from there, you can still find the smell of creosote. Step over pallets and crab pots, cracked pavement and day drunks. And there's a boat launch down behind the Sephora, where at the float I found a little old hand troller. It looked like a piece of home, painted fresh white, which is a color of pride for wood boats that are fastened with nails that weep rust if they aren't loved right. I stopped and watched two men working on it, I thought, until I saw they were slicing through the stainless steel turnbuckles with a cutting wheel. I kept on standing there, because I didn't want it to be true. And then I finally picked up my courage and walked down to ask. They said, unpaid mooring fees, 3 months derelict, headed to the scrapyard to be crushed. 3 months? That's not even an off-season. 3 months is your rent went up, and you had to get a root canal without insurance. And then the guy who pays you under the table to frame garages ran out of cash before payday. And there's no name on her side, just AK numbers telling me we both fished in Alaska. And I thought, whose father's boat was this? Whose grandfather's? And then me and a homeless guy stood there in the parking lot, watching that nameless boat die by inches in a town that used to belong to working people. And I'm telling the wrong story. That's how I used to tell it, and it ended like that, like hearing a report about a shooting on the news, where at the end we agree that the world isn't what it used to be, that it's getting worse, that it's dying. And I found it so unbearably boring, because it turns out you can look up AK numbers, and it turns out I did know that boat. That was El Nido. The Nest, that was Patrick's boat. And I have a grainy 4x6 photo of her from 15 years ago. Him on the back deck, a blur, hand cranking the girdies like a fiend. Mariah used to say that if you asked any other fisherman on a bad day how things had gone, they'd say, I caught 1 fish. But if you asked Patrick, he'd say, I caught a fish today. So I sent a message to Patrick, who I hadn't talked to in all those 15 years. And he said, whoa, I thought that boat died in Ketchikan years ago. He has a big boat now and a family. He said the picture that I took was after a shipwright in Hoona helped him put in 12 new planks, 40 new frames, a new deck, new beams, new ironwood stern post. He said she was built in Washington in 1925. It's good she made it back. They say fishermen shouldn't be braver than their boat. We were always worried that Patrick was braver than the Nido, that little phone booth top house following the big boats out to the big ocean. But the Nest did her job for 96 years. It's not a matter of whose father's boat was that or whose grandfather's. The question to ask is whose kid, whose grandkid was born because they made it home? Whose children were fed because of that boat? She did her job. She kept them all safe, brought them all back. They fought entropy together, battle after battle in a war you can never win. I don't think that a bird feels grief when the pieces of a tree that they wove together finally come apart. What's a few hours of dying at the dock compared to all that living?
Delivered with their hands in their pockets. How did she do that? Okay, we have a real treat now, a local favorite. Lori Haight lives over on the Long Beach Peninsula. Her husband, Smitty, was one of the original Fisher poets, people, and very prolific here in Astoria. He passed away 13 years ago, and Lori has since kept his memory alive, and she's here to do that again and remember him for us. So give Lori Haight a big happy welcome.
That's perfect. Thank you, Lou. There's someplace I can set this. Great. Hello. I can't see you, but that's all right. Yeah. So I'm going to read you a poem that Smitty wrote in 2001 for the Fisher Poets Gathering. He died in 2012, and he was loved. Anyway, the name of this poem is "Simple Salmon and the Troller from Hammond." Oh, is that better? Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. That's perfect. A troller from Hammond sought to catch simple salmon, but there's nothing simple about it. Tons of stuff he must tote and store on his boat, because he can't go fishing without it. There's sandpaper and paint scraper, sharpening stone, silicone, alarm clock, padlock hasp, wood rasp, wood bench, liquid wrench, thread cutting oil, aluminum foil, chain links, well-done sinks, garbage bags, shop rags, mahogany stain, urethane, cable ties, screw eyes, taps and dies, wire ties, belt tension, wrench extension, brass toggle, safety goggles, wood rough keys, never sees, epoxy glues, self-tapping screws, auger bits, and entry permits. That's quite a long list, and not be missed when 40 miles offshore. By anticipating the coiling and baiting, he makes more trips to the store for nautical charts, oil stove parts, line spreader, bolt header, cold shuts, stuff for cuts, a wire basket, form a gasket, some red lead, sewing thread, fair leads, glass beads, inner tubes, special lubes, acetone, Rizolone, flex coil, linseed oil, O-rings, various springs, universal belts, scraps of felt, splicing fids, glass jar lids, leak detector, radar reflector, rain cape, duct tape, stitching palms, and sea lion bombs. This troller from Hammond knows to catch the salmon is far from a sure bet. Lots of gear he must use, and some leads he may lose. So he needs more stuff yet, like C-clamps, number stamps, latch pins, storage bins, alternator, insulator, beeswax, carpet tacks, oil tan leather, life ring tether, wood dome, Velcro, file handles, wax candles, oil rings, Ziploc bags, cable grips and E-clips, knee boots, rain suits, hand towels, wooden dowels, line snubber, patching rubber, extension cord, cutting board, magnetic tools, folding rules, hydrometer, thermometer, good luck charm, and a bilge alarm. The boat's half sunk with all this junk. Every locker and bin, but come to mind, there's more to find and hope to still stuff it in. I'll look for sisal rope and a telescope, gum back labels, title tables, some marker pencil, number stencil, tin snips, paper clips, stitching twine, iodine, hookstone, hydrophone, Frodex, marine text, pressure sender, mooring fender, safety switch, pine tar pitch, quadrant cables, cleaning tables, steady sails, ring neck nails, foul weather hat, rubber mat, side signal flares, chain lock spares, life raft, pump shaft, crimping pliers, lashing wires, shearing boards, and bungee cords. All this stuff, but never enough, not finished yet. He keeps on cramming in quest of the salmon, but there's still more to get. Like nylon twine, sulfur brine, terminal lugs, 6-inch plugs, spreader bars, bag bomb jars, plastic pails, copper nails, box of matches, rubber patches, anchor line, hoppies number 9, 22 shells, signal bells, gunny sack, almanac, woolen socks, snatch blocks, seasick pills, twist drills, pancake turner, propane burner, ball bearings, frozen herring, easy biters, torch lighters, razor blades, sunshades, belt guards, a deck of cards, gaff books, and girly books. Remember the past, season last? A warning to be heeded. So now's the chance. Take one last glance. Some items badly needed, such as Romeo slippers, toenail clippers, dental floss, Tabasco sauce, flour sifter, stove lid lifter, sink stopper, popcorn popper, egg beater, voltmeter, oatmeal mush, scrubbing brush, clam chowder, chili powder, chain breaker, Martine shaker, frying pan, exhaust fan, muffin tins, taper pins, tub of butter, kiwi cutter, saran wrap, rat trap, lighter flints, peppermints, pigtail plug, coffee mug, swivel teas, Parmesan cheese, 7-strand, new decade, sea marker dies, and kiss wife goodbye. Now the season's open, and of course he's hoping with his vessel so well outfitted that now or never, salmon simple or clever will easily be outwitted, though plans well laid, no fortune was made, save for a paltry sum. Simply stated, fishing's complicated, and simple salmon was not so dumb. Thank you. Smitty's favorite poet was Robert Service, who wrote long, story-like poems. And Smitty went on to become a commercial salmon trawler, and I started fishing with him on the Sea Minor in 1980, just as he was getting divorced. Being a cat lover, I wanted to have one on the boat and had to put up quite a fight for him to agree. This is a poem he wrote for me about our cat, and this is a true story. And I need to inform you that the words eleophobe means someone who hates cats, and eleophile is someone who loves them. Okay, so this is a poem Smitty wrote for me. And the name of it is The Ballad of Bridge Cat. One day I said, I want a cat. I think they're lots of fun. Smitty countered, stating, you are the only one. A difference of opinion hardly turned a spat whether or not 'twas practical for us to have a cat. 'Cause we lived on a fishing boat. It was our only home, and there were no trees for a cat to climb, nor alleys it could roam. Although he argued long and loud, he gave in after a while, a triumph for the eleophobe. by the aerophile. With haste, I searched the classifieds. Then we're Alaska bound, with a tiny kitten aboard, headed for the Fairweather grounds. Its life was now confined to sea, far from any land, living on the Flying Bridge with a box of sand. Shanghaied from her littermates for life on the bounding main, she clawed up and down a hawser rope. Bridge Cat was her name. Adapting to a life at sea, there was no other choice, and she confirmed her happiness with loudly purring voice. Whether it be decks awash or rain pelting from the sky, Bridge Cat seemed not to mind, and she was seldom dry. Whenever it did happen that near the docks we'd close, Bridge occupied the bow stem. On the anchor she did pose. She couldn't seem to wait until we were tied up safe, 6 feet away from the dock, and she'd leap into space. She prowled the docks and other boats, but always came to rest on Sea Miner's Flying Bridge in her cozy nest. She took advantage, like all cats, when it came to eating, especially the salmon hearts, while they were still beating. The very end of the boom was her favorite perch, no problem for an agile cat, both sea rocking lurch. From here she saw the cleaning trough with anticipated stare. I'd toss up a needlefish, and she'd snatch it in midair. That's the way the season went, no bird or mouse or rat. Bounty of the ocean was crunched up by Bridge Cat. We'd dump a shrimp pail in a we'd dump a shrimp pot in a pail. That's there that she'd caught 'em. Arm deep in the water, she'd reach to grab them off the bottom. Season ended, heading south. What would she eat now? The tasty seafood tidbits replaced by dry cat chow. Then, sometime that winter, inside the Ballard locks, Bridge Cat found a boyfriend on the fisherman terminal docks. So our cat's population was increased by 6. Smitty wisely mentioned not a gunny sack and bricks. Next season fast approached. New homes must be found, discovering with luck 5 more aerophiles around. But one kid still begged for a home. For this we also prayed, and before we headed north, we had Bridge Cat spayed. While we were in the locks, descending to the sound, talking to a nearby boat, the last kit's home was found. The locksman was a jewel, and whilst the kitten purred, he lowered down a bucket and to the other boat transferred. Oh, we were so happy at last, our problem solved. But not so for poor Bridge Cat, her happiness dissolved. All the way up north, we could tell that on her mind was a desperate hope that her kittens she would find. We made a stop in Ketchikan to pick up some supplies. Bridge Cat roamed around the floats with searching eyes. The next morning it was time to go, but my Bridge Cat was gone. After days of fruitless search and call, we reluctantly went on. Fishing on the outside bank, some friends gave us a shout. Hey, we saw your cat in Pelican. It was her without a doubt. At first, we didn't think it was. We scarce believed our eyes. But not our dog, Vanilla. Her friend, she recognized. Well, this news gave me fresh hope. I was excited and elated. But I'd have to wait till the next closure. In 3 weeks, it was dated. It seemed to take forever, the arrival of that date. Then the Sea Miner made a tack for Lizzie Strait. I searched the town of Pelican, asking everyone I knew. No trace was found of Bridge Cat, so what was I to do? Well, Smitty wanted to take off and wished that I were faster, while he whiled away the time with his pal, the harbor master. We came to town to find our cat. My wife looked every place. Well, I might have your cat, he said. Did it have an orange face? Well, a skeptic always, he said yes, but one clue didn't show that it was Bridge, so Smitty said, oh, much more I'll have to know. Did Dr. Rasher spay your cat in Seattle at his clinic? Well, Smitty's eyes lit up with shock. He didn't have to mimic. This really threw him for a loop. How'd you know this from afar? Well, I used to work for Dr. D. I recognize the scar. Just then, I came back down the dock so sad without my pet, and Smitty said, there may be hope, now don't be so upset. We went back into town just as fast as we were able and found Bridge Cat fast asleep on the harbor master's table. He then told us the story of some alien-phobic lout who found her stowed away on board and promptly tossed her out. 'Twas fate. The Kansas came along. The skipper came beside and saved her from Wrangell Narrows, where she swam against the tide. The Kansas docked in Pelican singing glory from above and died in the wool aerofoil. With this cat, he fell in love. Alas, her missing kittens, poor Bridge Cat still was seeking. On other boats she searched, went a snooping and a peeking. A while thus engaged, the boat cast off. Away with her they drove. Upon discovery, she was dropped off in Elfin Cove. Her search there continued, and what happened then? Another boat gave her a ride back to Pelican again. This time the harbor master took in this calico friend, and so our trip to town came to a happy end. For several years, she fished with us without strife or harm. She lived to be 20 years old on a riverside Stadwood farm.
Okay, this next guy, I've seen him before. Gino Leach, he lives between Cape Disappointment and, this is his own description, a dismal niche in Chinook, Washington. He's a former merchant seaman and a Gulf Coast dredger, I think is that word. Gino also fished the Oregon, Washington coast, Bristol Bay, and unfortunately, Gino is the plank owner of the Fisher Bows Gathering, and thanks for coming.
A lot of flotsam and jetsam washed up on these shorelines over the years. Here's one of them, Lone Star Red. Lone Star Red sat on a splintered bar stool, held together by crab pot wire and rubber wrap, and coursed an old six-string that had witnessed more misery than a Greyhound toilet. Red sang raw deals, bump steers, and the shit end of the stick, thus connecting the dots to his past, present, and future. As a kid out in West Texas, Red dreamed of taking burnt orange hair, blue bonnet eyes, and Cherokee cheekbones to Nashville. Red made the spotlight, but it was aimed by a Corpus Christi cop in a black and white squad car. Well, Red jumped bail, stole a car, drove to Oregon, and reinvented himself as Lone Star Red. Thank you. Here comes the old dreaded notebook. My wife put a lot of time into this thing. Okay, so this one is called Halfway to Timbuktu. El Padre, a shell-shocked old Gulf Coast shrimper, came around to the West Coast in the 70s She was bone on bone, stove in, stove up, double rig, double trouble. Her lazarette was so thin, you could read a newspaper through it. Her skipper was Billy Dale, an East Texas, Louisiana man mix that stood 5'6" on a good day, and his shrimp from Calcasieu, Louisiana to Cape Flattery. Billy's deckhands were Kenny Pearsall and Mule Boyd, both local rounders with colorful backgrounds. They had been with Billy for 3 years, were hard workers, and reliable for the most part, except when Mule's wife ran off with an aluminum siding hustler from Kelso. One night, when Kenny climbed aboard El Padre, she was idling and ready to stick her nose out of the East Basin. So where's Mule this time, Billy? I ain't gonna believe this, Kenny. Yeah, I will. So Mule texted me a couple hours ago. He's hiding under a log truck out in Napa. He's wearing one sock and has his pants on backwards. Said some jealous husband came home early. Mule dove out the bedroom window just in time. Hey, you think we ought to drive out there and look around for him, Kenny? Nah, Kenny said. I've known Mule since we were juvenile delinquents together in Uniontown. Mule can coyote his way out of anything. Hell, he's probably halfway to Hebo by now. All my stuff goes back 30, 40, 50 years even, you know. I like to write about local stuff. And anyway, so this one here is, let me see if I can get this together. I modified my notebook underway, you know. My wife's gonna tear my ass off. Sorry, darling. She's an old fisherman's daughter from Chinook. Her granddaddy, all of them were there. Freebirds, Carries, and Malcos. Yeah, you know, real deal stuff, you know. She had a boat named after little Joanne Troller. It's a good deal, man. So this is called Popeye's house. This guy's, he's got to remain notorious, you know, because I don't want his place getting broke into or nothing, but, you know, the other thing is he's been on the lam for 30 years. This is Popeye's house. Well, it's due north of the Moby Dick, south of Oysterville, a 1 mile stagger from Ole's Nook and west of the Shell Pile Hills. Well, you hang a left at the crab buoy tree by a derelict oyster scow, then follow the sound of a swamp dog's bark. You find Popeye's house. Well, Lulu will dart out to greet you with her body-piercing bark. She'd been known to shatter beer mugs at docks in Ocean Park. When she was shanghaied down in Louisiana on Popeye's rusty tug, he had the only boat in the bayou with a 4-legged wire broad. Well, the salvage tsunami warning sign ports you to the door. The tsunami lives inside. packs a hog leg 44. Once you've knocked and introduced yourself, he'll welcome you inside. Where Popeye, Lulu, 13 cats, and the maritime world collide. Well, there's a blistered tramp freighter name boards and tarnished telegraphs, fairleads, flags, and fenders, and a rusted tugboat stack. Yeah, Popeye's got the goods, but that's just a surface scratch. He's bartered, begged, and plundered from Port-au-Prince to Kodiak. Well, he's game as hell, but a relic as well. And like those nautical treasures, he's been waterlogged, sagged and hogged, stove in, stove up, and weathered. Well, you've tasted a salted slice of the Willapa life. You can't wait to brag and boast about Popeye, Lulu, the 13 cats, and all that stuff that used to float. Well, you be one up on a folklorist. You'll pack a ton of local clout whenever you proclaim, I've been to Popeye's house. So this one is, fuck it. This one was, I wrote this one several years ago, and I'm pretty proud of it because it covers one of the all-time greats over in the Washington side. And his son, this is Lucky Kemmer, Jimmy Kemmer, and his son, Jeff, approached me a couple of times. He says, you ever think of writing one about my old man? I said, I sure have. So he came back and asked me again one time. I said, okay, let's get after it. He says, well, what do you want? I said, well, come over to the house. All I need is slang and geographics and what beds do you work in the oyster grounds? I says, I know Jimmy, and I says, I know what he looks like. That's all I need from you, man. So time goes by, and Jeff caught the flying ebb here a few months ago and passed on. So, but anyway, so if it wouldn't have been for Jeff, I probably wouldn't have his poem in front of me right now. It's called Lucky Is as Lucky Does. Well, he resembles the weather side of a rip-rap rock. A flying bridge faded blue denim cap swaggers on his head. Lucky in his signature sky piece have endured knife-wielding winds and pike-pole rains from the Willapa to Bristol Bay. Time and tide have rendered him squawk-wise as a bent-framed F-150 Ocean Park clam eater. He'd been lit up by lightning 2 times, had a leg crushed by a hemlock log, 7 children road field logging in Willapa Hills. He'd been busted up on crabbers, gill netters, and oyster scouts, burned by gasoline, jellyfish, and fish cops. He's had more repairs and replacements than Duck Omen's dump truck. And I like that. Meanwhile, rubber wrap, crab pot wire, twisted up welding rods keep Lucky in a game. Lucky needs a tide book like Jesus needed a Bible. His heart pumps Willapa brine, his soul loses Willapa mud. Hell, he reminds the crew, I've been on a bait before you were bouncing around your old man's nutsack. dredged, picked, packed, and tubbed oysters from Seal Slough to the Oysterville Sink. Slog, bog, mucked and mired, station house bed, 5-acre bed, the outer flats, Nema's Spit, and Smoky Hollow. When Lucky's on the big wheel and the tide clock is ticking, the crew know the drill. Take a pinch of gumption from their gizzard, grin and bear Lucky's banter as familiar as the mud splatters on their faces. More work, less talk. Don't make me separate you city slickers. Getting paid a man's wages, use both hands. Tide's coming. Hump it, boys. And they do. This is memorial. So, hey, find me. Call the cops. No, I got you in 1 minute here, man. I wrote this for Jeff Kimmer. Passed on. I read this in memorial service. So, Jeff Kimmer's life was centered by tide books for the Columbia River, the Willapa, and Bristol Bay. A tide book calls the shots, determines when to leave, when to fish, and when to go home. A tide book doesn't suffer fools, tolerate arrogance, and for disbelievers, it may be the last book they never read. Jeff was blessed with horse sense, a power pack back, a Kentucky bourbon barrel chest, and a splitting mold grin that endured marathon round hauls, fought down fear, calmed the waters, and eased the pain. Jeff Kimmer had a good run and left a big wake. Thank you.